when we used to listen to CDs, right? We used to have these like booklets that came with them, the liner notes when you get the lyrics, and maybe the band put some artwork and stuff. But for this album, they also wrote about what happens to animals for food, for entertainment, for clothing, and for experimentation. And it was just like a crazy moment for me. You know, I didn't know any of this stuff, never really thought about it. And I just remember reading the liner notes to this album and being like, wow, that is crazy. But I closed them and I sort of went about my day, and I tried to just, you know, I didn't really think about it that much until I went to dinner that night, and I ordered, I ordered filet mignon, which is like this, you know, meat dish, and I didn't think anything of it. And then when it came out, I literally saw it completely differently. Like, I used to see meat as food, and now I saw it as animal flesh. So nothing about the food had changed, but it was my understanding of what it really was. It had really shifted, and I just couldn't eat it. I couldn't eat meat anymore. So I wish I had the liner notes here to show you guys. I wish I could know exactly what were in those liner notes that had such an effect on me. But the next best thing I could find was this music video, which the band put together for the title track of the album. There's definitely, you know, a message in there that's, I mean, you see they've got the glasses on, and when they put those glasses off, when they take the glasses off, they can see things for as they really are, right? So yeah, I mean, you know, that really affected me when I read those liner notes. And you know, for the rest of that summer, this is 2005, I couldn't eat meat anymore. I just didn't see it as food anymore. And you know, to sort of make sense of the way I was feeling, I started calling myself, thinking of myself as a vegetarian. And you know, this was not a diet that I did for health reasons or anything like that. It was purely an ethical sort of decision that I really just, I didn't see meat as food anymore. And I hadn't really made the connection yet with dairy and eggs and other forms of animal exploitation, but it was just so obvious to me that, you know, meat, it wasn't something that I wanted to put in my body. So, you know, so here I was eating. My diet looked like basically for breakfast would be poached eggs on toast with a glass of milk. My lunch would be, you know, a cheese sandwich with potato chips and maybe some soda for lunch. And then my dinner would be like, I don't know, triple cheese pizza, like literally like so much cheese. And because I thought I needed more eggs and more dairy products because I wouldn't get enough protein, right? We're all kind of brainwashed to think we need certain things from animal food. So I was like, well, I'm not eating meat anymore. I need to eat these other animal foods to get enough protein. And it didn't work out very well for me. I started gaining weight. My acne was getting like really bad. I had a lot of acne right around here. And you know, I wasn't really happy with how being vegetarian was changing my life. I didn't have any sort of social network. Like I didn't know anybody else who was vegan or vegetarian. I wasn't, you know, didn't know anything about nutrition or anything like that. I was just sort of, you know, doing my own thing, and it just really didn't feel right to me. But it started to really get to me. You know, I was always the only one who wasn't eating meat, and people were always questioning me, you know, why aren't you eating meat? Like, why are you, you know, why are you, basically, why are you different, right? And I didn't really know. I didn't have all the answers. I just knew that it didn't feel right to me. But at the same time, you know, as a teenager, I was worried about what other people thought, and eventually I went back to eating animals because I was just so unhappy with dealing with, I think, mainly the pressures, like the social pressures. I wanted to fit in, and I sort of one day I remember, I think I had like I think I got, you know, dumped by my girlfriend or something had happened. I was in a really bad space, and I was just like, you know what? Everybody else is doing it. What does it matter? I'll go back to eating animals, and I'll just forget about all that stuff that I know. Just put it somewhere, put it in a box somewhere in my mind, and go back to eating animals. So I did. And then when I was 19, so this is like a few years later, I was in my second year of university, and I remember I woke up one day with a sore throat, and by the end of the day it had progressed to the point where, you know, just swallowing put me in like excruciating pain. Like it was like really painful. But this was nothing new actually. I used to get these kind of throat infections like once or twice every year. I would get this throat infection, I would go to the doctor would say, here's some antibiotics, take these for 2 weeks and you'll be good to go. But I was really mad at this time that I got sick because it had happened so many times. It was so painful, and I was just like, why does this keep happening to me? There must be an explanation, right? So I went on Google and I asked Google, I searched like, why do people get throat infections or something like that, right? And all this information came up that was about how dairy products cause ear, nose, and throat infections in tons of people, right? And as soon as I read that, I was like, wait a minute here, like, I kind of remembered all these ethical reasons that I had for not eating meat before, and now I had this health reason as well that was like, if you have the health reason and you have the ethical reason, it made it that much easier for me to say, you know what, I'm just going to be vegan. And at this point, I was a bit older, I had a bit more self-confidence, and I just didn't really care. Like, the idea of doing something different, it didn't scare me anymore. So yeah, I decided, you know what, I'm going to be vegan. And what I did was, I basically went to the internet, right? And I said, like, what's the healthiest vegan diet? What's the absolute healthiest diet on the planet that I can do? And I found this guy who was on YouTube, and he was making all these fruits and vegetable juices and talking about the regenerative powers of fruits and vegetables, raw fruits and vegetables. His name was the Life Regenerator. So I was like, oh, this guy, he's got my back, right? Like, he's gonna get my health to the next level. He was vegan, and so I started taking his advice. I ate as many raw fruits and vegetables as I could, and I started feeling a lot better. The more I ate, the better I felt, the better my skin got. I had more energy. The foods tasted better the more I ate of them. It was really, really good. I was feeling amazing. And for all of the good information that I was getting from the Life Regenerator and from actually a lot of these other sort of raw vegan, YouTubers or influencers back, this is like 2010, there were a lot of good messages, but there were also these messages that were like, cooked food is poison, cooked food is toxic for the body, you need to be pure. You need to avoid all carbohydrates and all sugars because those are going to cause all these kinds of health problems. So basically fear, just fear-based restriction over food. And I started losing a little bit too much weight. I started getting, a little too skinny. I started losing my energy. And I'm like, well, wait, what's happening here? This isn't quite working anymore. Worked for a while, but it wasn't quite a long-term thing. So I eventually found another YouTuber, and he was also eating a plant-based diet, but he was going around cycling with professional athletes, going on all kinds of endurance adventures, and he obviously, he had shown that he was able to perform at a really high level eating a plant-based diet. The difference was, he was not saying that cooked food is poison. He was saying, eat lots of fresh fruits and vegetables for sure, but don't feel like you have to, avoid cooked food. There's nothing wrong with cooked food. There's nothing wrong with carbohydrates. In fact, you need to make sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates so that you have the energy to do the things that you want to do. I took his advice, and I remember when I was sort of raw vegan and I was fearing, carbohydrates and all this stuff. I remember I would have sauerkraut in my fridge, and when I was hungry, I would just go and I'd be like, oh, sauerkraut, this is what I need. I need probiotics, and this is low carb, so it's all good. So I'd just be binging on sauerkraut. And I mean, as you guys can imagine, it never quite hit the spot, right? Sauerkraut is not going to do it. So instead of binging on sauerkraut, I now had permission to go and eat tons and tons of rice and bananas and potatoes and high carbohydrate plant foods. And I could really, give myself the energy that I needed. And another thing is, like, I was so caught up in having this pure diet and making everything about my health was about diet. When in fact, diet is just one part of health, right? We need to make sure that we're getting enough sleep. We need to make sure we're drinking enough water. We need to make sure that we're managing our stress. There are all kinds of things that we need to do for health. So I sort of developed this more holistic view around health, which really, really helped me. And ever since then, I've been learning along the way, but that was really a turning point for me, where I gave myself permission to enjoy, the abundance of food that, a plant-based diet has. There's so many foods, we don't need to be restricting them. And then also just looking after myself in other ways. So another thing that this other guy, Durian Rider, right? This guy who maybe you guys have seen on YouTube, you may think he's crazy or whatever, but he's got some good advice. And what I learned from him that was probably the most important was he referenced all of these doctors, all of these plant-based doctors who are promoting plant-based eating as a way to basically protect yourself against a whole host of health conditions. So, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, these are all things that you can basically avoid, prevent, or you can reverse them with a plant-based diet. So as soon as I got connected with these doctors and these credible sources for this information, that was really, really helpful, and I could learn a lot from them as well. So as soon as I had the sort of ethical side of things, I understood what was going on with the animals, and the fact that I didn't want to take part in that. I didn't want my money to be going towards funding animal exploitation anymore. And as soon as I had all this information that allowed me to be healthy at the same time and feel good about myself, I was becoming so interested in food. I really wanted to learn as much as I could about food and about health. And at the time I was studying music in university, and I was in third year, and I remember I just wanted to drop out. I wanted to go live on an organic fruit farm. I just wanted to do food. I was still enjoying music, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. And the summer leading into my last year of university, I went to live on an organic fruit and vegetable farm. And it was also an eco-village. So it was like a place where people were really, really into, living sustainably and, organic, sort of permaculture, like really sustainable agriculture. And I started learning a lot about the environment. And, the fact is, there's no doubt about it, right? I think now it's becoming a lot more common knowledge how bad animal agriculture is for the environment. But, it really does come down to the fact that if you care about the environment, if you're concerned about, the ecosystems around the world, the oceans, the rainforests, all of this stuff, the climate, if you're concerned about that, it really doesn't make sense to have animal products as a part of your diet, because it's an absolutely huge problem, in not just one way. It's not just CO2 emissions or one thing or the other. I mean, just a few facts here. I'm not going to name off all the facts, but 14% of CO2 emissions are from animal agriculture, like of human produced CO2 emissions. Those are from animal agriculture. And for comparison, about 13% of CO2 emissions are from all of transportation combined. Yet we always hear about transportation and changing into electric vehicles and stuff. That's all important, but animal agriculture is 14%. If you look at a broader picture of all of the greenhouse gases, including methane, including all of the effects of basically tearing down rainforests, all of the effects of global greenhouse gas emissions, it's more like 51% are attributable to animal agriculture. So huge amounts of our greenhouse gas emissions. It uses 1/3 of the Earth's fresh water. It takes up about 45% of the Earth's landmass, and it's responsible for about 91% of Amazon rainforest destruction. These are just some stats. If we keep going, I can tell you that with everybody who's concerned about plastic straws and reducing our plastic, 50% of the plastic in the oceans comes from the fishing industries. All the smoke that's in the air right now is a result of rising demand for animal products. So they need to grow more corn to feed for those animals. And what they do is they burn down forests so that they can grow more corn to feed to the animals. And then once they harvest the corn to feed to the animals, they burn the rest of the corn crops. And it's all in the air right now, and we're all breathing it, and people are dying right now because of it. I could keep going on with all the environmental stuff, but this is it's really a no-brainer that if you care about this stuff, you need to get animal products out of your diet, and we need to be promoting this as a cultural shift that we all make. So now we have 3 solid reasons. We have ethics, we have health, and we have the environment. So at this point, it was super, super clear to me that veganism made a ton of sense. So I'm going to tell you guys a little story. So I graduated from university, and I was like, okay, thankfully, I can now do whatever I want. I was enjoying studying music, but I really wanted to go and learn more about food, right? So I booked a ticket to Hawaii, and I was going to go and volunteer on fruit and vegetable farms for 5 months. And when I was getting on the plane to go to Hawaii, I stopped in a bookstore, and I saw this book that I'd heard of called Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. And I bought the book, and on the flight to Hawaii, I read almost the whole thing. And I didn't know it before reading the book, but a lot of the key, like, important chapters in that book actually took place in Hawaii. So it was really sort of like a synchronicity kind of thing going on there. I don't know what it was all about. But in reading the book, you know, I was already doing some running, and I was doing some cycling. But the way that Rich spoke about swimming in the book, it made me really want to get in the water. So the first day that I got to Hawaii, I went with some new friends that I'd made. We went into the water, went swimming in the ocean, and I could swim, but I wasn't a very good swimmer. I could kind of get from A to B and keep myself afloat, but I wasn't a very good swimmer. And my two friends that I went with into the water, they had flippers on. And the plan was that, like, okay, well, if anything happens, like, we've got flippers, you know, we've got your back. But the thing was, you know, I looked, 1 minute I'm right beside them, we're swimming together, and the next minute I'm being pulled out away from the island, and my friends are nowhere to be found. And I'm just like, what is going on here? So I'm Canadian. Some of you guys are maybe Australian or from other places where you know about riptides. Like, who knows what a riptide is? Anybody know what a riptide is? So I had no idea what a riptide is. So I was just like swimming as fast as I possibly could, like probably, you know, terrible technique, I can barely swim. Swimming so fast, trying to get back, but it didn't matter. I was just getting pulled out farther and farther and farther. And eventually I just gave up. I was like, you know what? Like, there's nothing I can do here. Like, I'm not gonna be able to swim back. So I have to either hope that there's gonna be some rescue team that like comes out in the boat to save me, or I'm just gonna keep going out to sea and I'm gonna be stranded, and I should probably just hope that like a shark ripped my head off or something like that, because then I'll just have a quick death and it'll be over with. And I actually like accepted that I was gonna die. I was like, I'm dead. Like, there's probably like I'm gonna die. So I was like, you know what? I'm dead. So I relaxed. I'm like, this is the end. And I was like, but you know what? I said, like, I'm not religious, but I said sort of this prayer in that moment. I was like, you know what? If I do, for some reason, get back and I get out of this, then I'm gonna make sure that like I make my life count for something. You know, I'm gonna put my life to good use. And it was sort of like a prayer that I made. I'm like, you know, let me live and I'll do something good with my life. And as soon as I sort of did that, I was like, wait, I'm coming back closer to the island now. It started, you know, I don't know, the riptide, I guess they normally go in circles. Maybe Australians in the crowd know a bit more about that. But yeah, apparently riptides will eventually bring you back. So they, you know, the riptide did bring me back, and I made my way back, and I was probably 2 kilometers down the coastline when I got out of the water, and you know, went back to my friends, and they felt terrible, but like really there's nothing they could have done, so there's no worries. And I actually said to them, I'm like, you know what, I'm glad I had that experience, because when I sort of, you know, had that moment of like, okay, like this could be the end of my life, you know, it really gave me a lot of perspective. And I think I still carry a lot of that today. Like, it makes me appreciate each and every day, and it makes me want to do something, you know, good with my life. You know, you can't take life for granted. So, yeah, terrifying experience, but it really got me going in terms of, yeah, just putting some motivation into me. And you know, after that, I really wanted to learn how to swim. You know, I wanted to learn how to swim before so that I could do triathlons, but now I had this experience that I needed to overcome it. But when I was in Hawaii, I couldn't really get out into the water and swim with confidence. I couldn't get into the water and swim. I could go in like a little bit to like get wet, but I was not going out until I learned how to swim. So for the rest of my time on Hawaii, I did some running and some cycling, but I didn't do much swimming. But I did hear a lot about this race in Hawaii, which is, it's the Ironman World Championship, and it started in Hawaii, on the big island of Hawaii, and it takes place every year in Kona. So I went to Kona on my last night in Hawaii, and I went to where the race start is, because I thought it would be kind of a cool place to go and hang out, and it was. It's like this, you know, really cool spot on the ocean. And it was nighttime, and I was sort of just reflecting on my time in Hawaii and like what I'd learned and what I was going to do when I got back to Canada, like what I was going to do with my life kind of thing. And I remember looking out at the water, and there was this swim cap. It was like a white swim cap, and it was kind of freaky because I was like, what, did somebody drown out there and lose a swim cap or whatever? But the swim cap basically just washed up onto shore, like right in front of me. It was this crazy experience, and I took it as like a sign from the universe that the universe was telling me to learn how to swim. So I took that swim cap, and when I got back to Canada, I got into the water in some safe environments, and I learned how to swim. And so that was really, got me into triathlon. And after Hawaii, I learned how to swim, and I kept getting better at cycling and running, and I really wanted to see what I could do in terms of, would I be able to compete in triathlons at a high enough level so that I could win some races and I could get the vegan message spread that way. That was sort of what I took out of Hawaii. Is like, I want to do triathlon, I want to spread the vegan message, maybe triathlon's a way to do that. And I'm happy to say that I have been able to win a bunch of races over the past 3 years. Most notably, I won the Ironman 70.3 championship, Asia Pacific championship for my age group last year. So I had this hanging around, so I figured I'd bring this just for proof. And it's been really cool because, winning races, I always wear, vegan on my kit, and people, when I pass them on the bike, because I'm still a crappy swimmer, so when I pass them on the bike, they see a vegan passing them. And after the race, wearing the vegan shirt on the podium, it, gets some people thinking, and I've had a lot of really good conversations, and it's been a really good way for me to get the message out there. But, you guys, you don't all have to be athletes. We don't all have to be athletes. I'm not even sure that this is how I'll do my activism for the rest of my life, but we all have sort of skills and things that we can do to spread this message. So, it's, you can do whatever makes sense to you. But the thing is too, like, you said you watched the Game Changers movies. How many people here have seen the Game Changers movie? Okay, so quite a few of you guys. So, I think that all the information in that film, which is about the performance-enhancing benefits of plant-based diet, I think that does have something to do with the reason that I've been able to kind of, have the athletic success that I've had. But I think probably more important than that is that I'm racing for a specific reason. I really want to win these races so that people see that vegans are not weak. Vegans can, be successful as athletes. We're not deficient in protein. That's why, like, when I'm training and I'm doing a hard training session and my eyeballs are popping out of my head because I'm doing 400 watts for, 5 minutes or whatever, like, I can think about why I'm doing it. It's not just because, I'm Jason Fonger and I'm a good athlete. It's like, no, like, I'm doing this for veganism. So I really think that is, you can take that into whatever you're doing, whether it's a business or whatever you're doing to spread the message. And I think you really can draw some power from that, from doing something for something that's bigger than just you, a cause that's bigger than just one person, right? So, social media is a great way to spread the message. There's all kinds of different ways that you can use social media to get the vegan message out. And being vegan and saying, look, I'm not going to buy animal products anymore, I'm not going to support these industries, that is you saying, okay, I'm not participating. But what we need is we need people to actively try to change, like, our culture, because it's just normal. Like, we need to actually take action to change the way that things are. So a lot of people will say that veganism is a non-action, and when you start to do activism, when you start to actually try to get the message out there, that's when you're actually doing something good. So I really encourage you guys to think about what you could do to spread the message. I'm going to give you guys a few ideas. So there's an organization that I work with called Anonymous for the Voiceless, and what we do is demonstrations called the Cube of Truth, and it's a kind of street outreach. And there's many, you can do street outreach in many ways, but street outreach is basically just having conversations with people on the street about veganism. Often we'll use TVs to show footage of what actually happens in animal agriculture so that when you're talking to people, you can actually show them. So that's an organization that you can get involved with if you want to do something like that. And if you guys want to know the names of anything after, I'm happy to reiterate and write anything down, leave you guys with stuff to take away. But Anonymous for the Voiceless is a great organization to get involved with, to do some activism. There's also the Save movement, and they do something that's called a vigil. And by the way, all these organizations are in cities all over the world, so you can get active wherever. But the Save movement, they do vigils, which are basically when you go to a slaughterhouse, and what the organizer of the event will do is they will stop the truck that's bringing the animals into the slaughterhouse, and just for a couple of minutes, just so that the volunteers can basically just bear witness to those animals, document it on their phones or with cameras, go live on Facebook, share their experience with their friends, and just sort of bring the reality of what's going on into the social media feeds of people around. It's also a very, very, I found it to be a very powerful experience just to go and actually be at one of these vigils and just, actually really face, what's happening, because it's easy, it's all hidden. It's easy to forget about what's actually happening to these animals, and it's really important, I think, to connect with that if you can through a vigil. And the last way, if you guys, with vigils and street outreach, you're pretty much working within the law. You're not going to be getting arrested at these kind of events. But if you do want to really push the envelope and really start, getting into creating change and working perhaps without the security of knowing you're not going to get arrested, you can work with an organization called Direct Action Everywhere. And not everything they do is illegal, but they definitely try to push the boundaries of the legal framework as to what can be done in terms of activism. So they'll do things like open rescues, where they'll actually go into farms and they'll look for animals who are being mistreated, or maybe they're sick or they're injured, and they'll actually remove those animals from the farm. And depending on what the legislation is like in the area, sometimes that is completely legal, and in other areas that is illegal, and there's certain risks that you run for that. But nonetheless, it's an important part of progressing, this movement, is getting laws changed. And Martin Luther King said that we have a responsibility, we have a moral responsibility to disobey laws that are unjust. So I think that it's really inspiring, the work that DXE does. I personally don't do a whole lot of that, but I really have a lot of respect for people who do. So you can have a restaurant that offers plant-based food and makes it easier for people to eat these kinds of options. You could be, maybe you're a computer designer and you make an app that makes it easy for people to go vegan. Or you could be a musician and you could make, like this band did that made me, ultimately got me thinking about all this stuff, putting, messages in your songs and stuff. There's literally millions of ways that you can contribute to this movement and getting the message out there. So I encourage all of you guys to think about your own skills and what you can do to make things happen and to get people thinking. Because we really do need people doing all kinds of different stuff. There's no one thing is better than the other. It's like we need all kinds of ways that people can find out about this message. So whatever it is for you, I would just say please do it, and keep in mind that the true challenge of being vegan is really not about figuring out where to get your protein from or what to eat. The real challenge is what made me go back to eating meat after being vegetarian in the first place, which is the fact that it's not easy to basically go against the grain of society, right? And basically say, I'm going to do something different when all the rest of society has the blinders on and you're the weirdo. That's the hard part, is dealing with that, right? But having said that, any difficulty that we go through as being vegans and doing something different in society, it really is, it's nothing compared to what the animals are going through every second of every day. And so we need to just remember that the difficulties we may face, they're only relative, and there's tremendous amounts of suffering happening right now, completely needlessly. Being vegan is really the least we can do if we want to do something for the animals. Being vegetarian, while many people are vegetarian for the animals, it really isn't enough, because when you understand the cruelty involved in the egg and dairy industries, and other kinds of, all kinds of animal exploitation, vegetarian, it really isn't enough. As far as health goes, don't get too caught up in purity or restriction. Make sure that you're eating enough. Don't be afraid of carbohydrates. Don't be afraid of sugars. If you don't want to eat refined sugar, that's fine, but get your sugar from fruit or whatever. For the environment, it's really a no-brainer that we need to be vegan. And in terms of getting the message out there, just find the best way that you can to do something, whatever you're comfortable with. So thank you guys so much for listening. We'll do some Q&A now, in case there's anything you guys want to get into. I'm stoked if there's any questions you guys have. Oh, thank you.